Hey there, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that many of us struggle with, recognizing when someone just isn't into us. You know that feeling, right? That uncertainty, that constant second guessing. We've all been there, myself included. I remember standing in my kitchen one evening, phone in hand, staring at a text conversation that had been one-sided for weeks. I kept making excuses. She's busy, she's going through something difficult. Maybe she didn't see my message. The truth was staring me in the face, but I wasn't ready to see it. I was holding on to hope because facing rejection felt too painful. But here's what I've learned through years of personal experience and countless conversations with people from all walks of life. When we ignore these signs, we're actually hurting ourselves more in the long run. We're investing emotional energy in someone who isn't investing back. We're missing opportunities to connect with people who would genuinely value our presence. So today I want to share with you the unmistakable signs that a woman is not interested in you romantically. Not to discourage you, but to empower you, because understanding these signals can save you time, heartache, and help you redirect your energy toward people and relationships that will truly fulfill you. Let's start with the most obvious sign, inconsistent communication. When someone is interested in you, they make time to talk to you. It's really that simple. They respond to your messages within a reasonable time frame. They initiate conversations, they ask questions about your life and share details about theirs. But when a woman isn't interested, communication becomes notably irregular. You might notice that your texts sit unread for days. Or maybe she reads them immediately but takes forever to respond with a short, generic reply. That's cool, or nice, or the dreaded K. These are not the responses of someone who's excited to hear from you. And if you find yourself constantly being the one to reach out first, that's a strong indicator that her interest level is low. I used to believe that everyone was as busy as they claimed to be. "I've just been swamped" became a phrase I accepted without question. But over time, I realized something profound. We all make time for what we prioritize. Even the busiest people in the world find minutes in their day for what truly matters to them. If someone consistently can't find those minutes for you, you're simply not a priority. Now, let's talk about the quality of your interactions when you do communicate. When a woman is genuinely interested, conversations flow naturally. There's a back and forth rhythm with both people contributing equally. But when interest is lacking, you might notice that you're carrying the conversational weight. You ask questions, she gives short answers. You share stories, she acknowledges them briefly, but doesn't reciprocate with her own. You suggest topics, but the discussion quickly fizzles out. It feels like trying to paddle upstream, exhausting and ultimately futile. I've been in conversations where I felt like I was performing a monologue rather than participating in a dialogue. And looking back, I should have recognized this as a clear sign. Another telltale indicator is how she responds to invitations or suggestions to meet up. Someone who's interested will make an effort to see you. They might not always be available, of course. We all have obligations and commitments, but they'll suggest alternatives if they can't make your proposed plans. "I can't do Friday, but how about Saturday afternoon?" That's what interest sounds like. On the other hand, vague responses without counteroffers are usually a gentle way of saying no without actually saying it. "I'm not sure about my schedule," or "let me get back to you on that," followed by silence, speaks volumes about her level of interest. I once spent months trying to coordinate a simple coffee date with someone who always had a reason why she couldn't meet. Eventually, I realized that if she'd wanted to see me, she would have found a way to make it happen. The excuses, however plausible individually, formed a pattern that revealed the truth. Body language is another crucial element to consider, especially during in-person interactions. When a woman is interested in you romantically, her body naturally orients toward you. She maintains eye contact, leans in when you speak, and finds subtle ways to decrease the physical distance between you, perhaps touching your arm during conversation or sitting close enough that your shoulders occasionally brush. Conversely, disinterest manifests physically as well. Limited eye contact, crossed arms, angled body posture away from you, and maintaining a significant physical distance are all subconscious ways of creating barriers. If you notice her consistently checking her phone, looking around the room, or seeming distracted during your conversations, these are indicators that her attention, and likely her interest, is elsewhere. I remember sitting across from someone at dinner, watching her eyes dart around the restaurant, her responses delayed because she wasn't fully present in our conversation. At the time, I attributed it to nervousness, but in retrospect, her body was honestly communicating what she couldn't say directly. She wasn't interested in being there with me. Social media behavior can also provide insights into someone's interest level. In today's digital age, how we engage online often reflects our real feelings. If a woman is interested in you, she'll likely interact with your content, liking posts, commenting occasionally, perhaps even sharing things that made her think of you. When interest is absent, however, you might notice a pattern of minimal engagement despite active presence elsewhere on the platform. She views your stories but never responds. She posts regularly but doesn't acknowledge your comments. Or perhaps most tellingly, she's slow to accept or respond to your connection requests on various platforms. I've experienced the confusion of seeing someone actively posting on social media minutes after supposedly being too busy to respond to a message. While there could be innocent explanations, patterns don't lie. How someone chooses to allocate their digital attention often reveals their true priorities. Another significant sign relates to how she integrates you into her broader life. Someone who sees potential in a relationship will gradually introduce you to different aspects of their world, mentioning you to friends, including you in group activities, sharing details about family or important events. This integration shows that they're envisioning a place for you in their life. When a woman isn't interested, however, she keeps you in a completely separate compartment. You never meet her friends. She's vague about her plans and doesn't invite you to join activities. Conversations remain surface level without the natural progression into deeper territory that characterizes developing relationships. I once spent months getting to know someone who always met me at locations far from her neighborhood, never suggested introducing me to anyone in her circle, and changed the subject whenever I asked personal questions. I later understood that she was intentionally keeping me at arm's length because she didn't see long-term potential. How she handles compliments and affection also speaks volumes about her interest level. When someone is attracted to you, compliments generate a positive response, perhaps a smile, a thank you, or reciprocated affection. There's a warmth to the exchange that's palpable. In contrast, disinterest often manifests as discomfort with expressions of admiration or affection. She might change the subject, respond with a joke to diffuse the moment, or acknowledge your words politely but distantly. Physical affection might be tolerated rather than welcomed, with subtle shifts away from touch or quick breaks from embraces. I recall giving someone a heartfelt compliment about how her passion for her work inspired me, only to watch her immediately deflect and launch into a completely unrelated story. That moment of redirection was her way of establishing boundaries. Boundaries that existed because romantic interest didn't. One of the subtler but most meaningful signs involves reciprocity of effort. Relationships, even in their earliest stages, require mutual investment. Both people should be contributing to the development of the connection, albeit in their own ways. When a woman is not interested, the balance of effort becomes noticeably lopsided. You're the one suggesting plans, initiating conversations, remembering details, and making accommodations. Her contribution is minimal, perhaps just enough to maintain politeness, but not enough to nurture growth. I spent far too long being the only one investing in a potential relationship, justifying the imbalance by telling myself that some people just aren't as naturally proactive or expressive. While that may be true to some extent, extreme imbalances in effort almost always indicate a corresponding imbalance in interest. Pay attention also to how she speaks about the future, both explicitly and implicitly. Someone who sees potential with you will naturally include you in future-oriented conversations. This doesn't necessarily mean making concrete plans months in advance, but rather an openness to the possibility of ongoing connection. When interest is lacking, future talk is absent or deliberately vague. Questions about upcoming events might be met with non-committal responses. Discussions about her future plans might conspicuously exclude any mention of where you might fit in. The time frame of your interaction remains firmly in the present, without the natural evolution toward later or next time. I once realized that despite months of regular communication with someone, our interactions existed in a perpetual present tense. There was never a, "we should do this again sometime," or "I'd love to show you this place eventually." The absence of future orientation was actually communicating something important about her vision, or lack thereof, for us. Another revealing sign is how she prioritizes you when unexpected opportunities or conflicts arise. We all have limited time and energy, which means choices about how we allocate these resources reveal our true priorities. When a woman is interested in you, you'll notice that she makes efforts to include you in spontaneous plans, or will try to accommodate changes to see you. If she has to cancel, she'll express genuine disappointment and suggest alternatives. You feel like a priority rather than an option. Conversely, when interest is lacking, you're easily displaced by other opportunities. Plans with you are the first to be sacrificed when something else comes up. Cancellations come without suggested alternatives. Your time together seems contingent on nothing better being available. I remember the stark contrast between someone who texted me immediately when concert tickets became available because she really wanted to experience it together, versus someone who habitually broke plans at the last minute for reasons that always seemed just plausible enough to not quite be offensive. The difference wasn't in their circumstances, but in how they chose to prioritize our connection within those circumstances. Consider also the level of curiosity she shows about your life, thoughts, and experiences. Romantic interest naturally generates curiosity, a desire to understand who you are beyond the surface level. This manifests as questions about your past, your perspectives, your dreams, and even your daily experiences. When a woman isn't interested, this curiosity is noticeably absent. Conversations remain superficial. She doesn't ask follow-up questions when you share something important. Details you've shared might be forgotten because they weren't deemed significant enough to remember. You might realize that despite numerous interactions, she knows very little about who you truly are. I've experienced conversations where I felt like I was being interviewed. Question after thoughtful question, each one building on my previous answers, creating a tapestry of genuine understanding. I've also had exchanges that felt like parallel monologues, two people speaking in turns but not truly connecting. The presence or absence of authentic curiosity tells you everything about someone's interest level. Another subtle but important sign involves how she responds when you pull back slightly. If you've been the primary initiator and suddenly reduce your outreach, does she notice? Does she step forward to close the gap? Or does the communication simply dwindle and disappear? When someone is interested in you, they notice shifts in your communication pattern and will generally make efforts to restore connection. If you've been texting daily and suddenly become less available, an interested person will reach out, perhaps asking if everything is okay or simply initiating conversation themselves. Someone who isn't particularly invested, however, might barely register the change. The space you create by pulling back simply remains empty. This absence of reaction is actually quite informative. It reveals that your regular presence wasn't significant enough to be missed. I once decided to stop being the one always reaching out first, curious to see what would happen with a particular connection. 2 weeks passed in complete silence before I received a casual, "Hey, been a while" text that made no acknowledgement of the unusually long gap. That moment clarified exactly where I stood in her priorities. Somewhere in the periphery, noticed only occasionally. Consider also how she responds to vulnerable moments or personal disclosures. When romantic interest exists, vulnerability is usually met with appreciation, reciprocal sharing, and a deepening of connection. Sharing something personal feels rewarding rather than risky.